So quite a lot of Star Wars news today, and we're going to start with Kathleen Kennedy, who in an interview with Dagobah Dispatch talked about the future of Star Wars content on screen in the Disney Plus shows, and she did say there is a strong possibility we're going to get more High Republic shows after The Acolyte. That's going to be a big push for the future of Star Wars. She was also asked about Jedi Survivor and whether Cal Kestis will ever appear in live action, and she said it's not something that's front and centre at the moment, despite seeing fan discussions online. But going back to the High Republic, Young Jedi Adventures seems to be doing really well on Disney+. The clips of the show, the shorts that were posted to YouTube before the show dropped, have exploded in terms of viewership. Before The Acolyte, this is the first on-screen High Republic show. It's primarily aimed at very young kids, but surprisingly has very good storytelling, it's very wholesome, and also teaches very good life lessons from the point of view of the Jedi, about sharing, friendship, working together and cooperation. I think this is a pretty good win. No doubt Disney Plus and Lucasfilm wanted to corner that market. They see how well shows like Bluey and Paw Patrol do. It's also very visually satisfying. I'm a big fan, especially of Nubs, such an adorable little character, but a powerful one too, a Jedi of the species Pooba. And yes, I caved in, I bought the plush. And so now, my dear friends, let's talk about the expanded universe. Star Wars canon is finally going to solve its Mara Jade conundrum. This comes after comments from Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau about wanting to respect the expanded universe in the Ahsoka show, but also in the 2026 Star Wars film. According to a new rumor which we covered the other day, the movie is literally going to be called Heir to the Empire, although Jeff Snyder now says this is not true. I have my own doubts if it's going to be called that, but regardless, they're going to draw upon Zahn's work, and the question is, are they going to bring in characters like Mara Jade, or are they just going to use the current canon characters in the Mandoverse and fill in those roles with them? And you know, when it comes to adapting elements of Heir to the Empire into live action into canon, there is going to be a lot of division in the fandom when it comes to comparing it to the books. There's inevitably going to be some discussion about it not being good enough, but of course they're going to deviate in some ways. And so when it comes to Mara Jade, Dave Filoni has to ask himself, is there a place for Mara Jade in this story? Not only that, but we already have so many Force users, Ahsoka, Ezra, Shin, Baylan. Mara Jade was a former assassin of Palpatine. At the time of Heir to the Empire, she was working as part of a smuggling group. The book unveiled her history as Palpatine's former assassin during the Galactic Civil War, and she was told as Palpatine's final wish to kill Luke Skywalker. But when she encountered Luke for the first time, the two relied on each other to survive, with Jade gaining respect for the Jedi Master and not killing him as a result. Mara Jade went on to become one of Legend's most popular and prominent characters over the years, and the two eventually fell in love, Luke and Mara Jade. The two got married, they had a child called Ben, and overall she became a very important character in Zahn's original trilogy. So a big question is, could Mara Jade fit into Disney canon? And will Dave Filoni do something with her? I think the answer is a strong maybe, but what I will say is that the original Heir to the Empire characters, for the most part apart from Thrawn, maybe Luke, are going to be replaced by those in The Mandalorian, like Ahsoka, Ezra Bridger, Din Djarin, and so on. So I think the roles of Leia, Han Solo, Mara Jade, and others are going to be diminished, reduced, if they're included at all. But I've always said, if Mara Jade does become canon, that would be awesome, and her death could be used to explain why Luke became so hopeless. One of the reasons, as well as all of the stuff with Ben Solo of course, he ended up on Ahch-To Island, depressed, alone, and abandoned the Jedi ways. Mara Jade being introduced and eventually killed could go a long way in contextualizing a great portion of the sequel trilogy, the depiction of Luke. What do you guys think? Those are just some of my ideas. Share your thoughts in the comments down below. In other Star Wars news, we have a depressing update for the KOTOR remake. According to Game Rant, a well-known industry insider shares a rather sad prediction for the troubled remake of the game, which has been long anticipated by Star Wars fans. The remake was originally announced back in September of 2021. We got a very brief but awesome teaser with Revan that revealed the game was going to be a PS5 exclusive before making its way to PC. And while the title initially targeted a 2022 launch, it got indefinitely delayed before publisher Embracer Group took the project from Aspyr Media and gave it to Saber Interactive, another one of its subsidiaries. This turn of events, coupled with repeated insider accounts of troubled development, fueled speculation that the KOTOR remake could just be a pipe dream. But now insider Jeff Grubb appears to share that sentiment too, predicting that the remake of the iconic game is never coming out. Grubb shared this information during his latest episode of Game Mess the podcast, after being asked how the KOTOR remake is coming along. While revealing that the Prince of Persia remake is also lost to the sands of time, KOTOR might eventually release, but he doesn't count on it just yet. Now, as grim as these remarks are, they should not be interpreted as a death sentence for the game. Aside from the fact that Jeff Grubb made it clear his words were just predictions, it's worth bearing in mind not everyone shares his pessimistic stance on the future of this game. On the contrary, some insider watchers recently posited that Dead Island 2's development hell inspires hope for the KOTOR remake, because it sets a precedent for a contemporary development cycle that managed to result in a critically acclaimed game in spite of its many difficulties, including multiple developer changes. So there might still be hope. Whether Saber Interactive manages to defy the odds like Dambuster Studios did with Dead Island 2 remains to be seen, but as things stand right now, the Knights of the Old Republic remake is still far from going gold. According to the original August 2022 report about the project, that was when it switched developers, sources close to the project estimated the game is going to require at least 2 more years of intensive development following its transition to Saber. So assuming the prediction made by Jeff Grubb does not come true, that puts the KOTOR release at the very earliest at 2024. But as I say, there's a very good chance it's a long way off. And so now, my dear friends, something we spoke about the other day, are we ever going to see more content with Padme? Now, we know she died in Revenge of the Sith, we saw her funeral scene again in Tales of the Jedi, so going forward, if we ever get more Padme Amidala, it would have to be retrospective, maybe in Tales of the Jedi Season 2, or in Kenobi Season 2, if that ever happens, in flashbacks. That being said, Natalie Portman has addressed returning to the franchise. No one's ever asked me to return, she says. Responding to fans on the internet during an interview with GQ, the legendary Natalie Portman revealed that she has no information on if we're ever going to see Padme again, and that Lucasfilm never asked, but if they did, she would definitely be open to returning. That's really interesting. I would love to see more Padme in the future, but a big question is, since Padme died quite young, could Natalie Portman play the role now, 18 years after her last appearance in Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith? They did get Hayden to play Episode 2 Anakin again, so anything is possible. Now, what's really awesome is that in 2023, nearly 2 decades on, Star Wars has experienced a prequel's renaissance. That trilogy was not only my childhood, but my introduction to Star Wars. That trilogy was the trilogy of my generation, and Lucasfilm on Disney Plus is doing quite a lot with this era. The Bad Batch, The Clone Wars, Tales of the Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Andor. Natalie Portman is fantastic. Let's react to this together.
Any chance that Padme Natalie Portman returns to Star Wars? I have no information on this. I'm open to it. Did Taika Waititi forget Natalie Portman was in Star Wars? He says he did. I thought he was joking. He's such a joker. And then afterwards, he said in some interview.
I think the Taika Waititi thing is absolutely hilarious. And kind of really weird because Taika Waititi's been tasked to write an entire Star Wars movie, so you'd kind of hope he knows more about the world and the fact that Natalie Portman was in those films. Whether it was just a slip up in the moment, he literally went up to her and said, "Do you want to be in Star Wars?" And of course Natalie Portman was Padme. Now, going back to this thing of Padme returning to the franchise, I'm all for it. I think she was one of the best characters of the entire trilogy. Some say that from a certain point of view, Padme was the protagonist of The Phantom Menace. And there's so much nostalgia, and given the fact she's open to it, not putting her in Kenobi Season 2, if of course they make it, is a wasted opportunity. But share your thoughts on this in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you always.